And to underscore that sex is exclusively an aspect of marriage, I note the sober fact that there is one ground for divorce. Even though, according to Scripture, marriage so unites a man and a woman that they become one flesh, there is something that lacerates that bond so that divorce is permissible. That one ground is sexual infidelity, fornication. That emphasizes that sex is an aspect of marriage. So has God made sex an aspect of marriage that every teaching, every law, every advertisement, every song, every picture that permits and even promotes sex outside of marriage is not only a lie, but also an assault on marriage. The sexual revolution is an assault upon marriage. That's the first absolute truth about sex. It is an aspect of marriage. The second absolute truth about sex, determined and revealed by God, is that since it is an aspect of marriage, sex is fundamental to the family. I mean by this not only that the sexual relations of the husband and wife ordinarily are fruitful in children, whom the husband and wife as parents then protect, provide for, and rear, but also that the sexual faithfulness to each other of the parents of the children safeguards the family. If marriage is the foundation of the family, the sexual faithfulness of husband and wife in marriage is the cement that keeps the foundation firm, keeps the foundation from crumbling. The fundamental importance of sex for family, according to God's intention and ordinance, is plain in the biblical account of the institution of marriage in Genesis 1, verse 28. There's the blessing of the newly married couple, Adam and Eve, with the sexual relationship had in view children and family. Be fruitful and multiply. God has structured the human life by family. Human life is not structured purely individualistically, but human life is structured by family. One husband, one wife, and their children. This is how God has structured societies and nations, worldly nations, and godless societies, by His providence, working through blood and natural law. This is especially how God structures His holy nation, the New Testament church, just as He structured the life of Old Testament Israel. The covenant family. I note here that this is ordinarily the case. There are exceptions. In 1 Corinthians 7, the apostle importantly defends and even praises the single life of some children of God, pointing out that in addition to the fact that God providentially governs the life of some of His children so that they live singly, which is honorable and praiseworthy. It is also the case that some deliberately choose to be single in order that they may more fully devote themselves to the work of the Lord. But that's an exception. Ordinarily, God structures life in the church by the family, to which sexual fidelity between husband and wife is basic. God brings forth His elect church not only by the saving of His elect through missions, but also in the covenant children of the believing father and mother, or in some cases, the children of one believing parent. And then God uses the solid family life, solid in no small part because of the sexual faithfulness of the husband and wife, to enrich the parents spiritually. That's something we sometimes overlook. The spiritual benefit of the covenant family for the parents. Reams could be written about how children and the responsibilities of rearing children enrich the parents and make of them a far better Christian man and a far better Christian woman than they would have been otherwise. But God also uses the covenant family to protect and nurture the children, to say nothing of the benefits that flow down to the grandchildren, and then the great-grandchildren, to 1,000 generations. Just think of the family structure cemented by sexual faithfulness indicated in Psalm 128, verse 3. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine by the sides of thine house, thy children like olive plants round about thy table. That's the Old Testament. The New Testament teaches the same thing about the covenant family, for which sexual fidelity is fundamental. The structure of the Christian life, ordinarily, in the New Testament, is the same as it was in the Old Testament, as revealed in Psalm 128, Ephesians 5, verse 22, to Ephesians 6, verse 4, makes this plain. There is set forth this structure of life in the holy nation of God. Believing husbands loving their own wives, which includes the sexual activity. Believing wives who in love for their husbands submit for Christ's sake. Both of the parents rearing the children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. The importance of sexual fidelity in marriage for the family is oh so simple. The truth is so obvious. The truth is so blessed by God. And this absolute truth about sex implies that the misuse of sex, the use of it contrary to the will of God, will result in the destruction of the family. Children are born without a father in their life, and without the solid family structure that they ought to have. Or the sexual infidelity of the parents breaks up the marriage and destroys the children, unless God is gracious with special degrees of grace, destroys the children emotionally and destroys the children physically and spiritually.